हेलो एवरीवन, वी हैव टू डिस्कस अबाउट द टीएलपी प्रोग्राम 2023 की प्रिपरेशंस देख लेते हैं। मैं डेली मेंस आंसर राइटिंग फेज 1 एंड जीएस पेपर 1 की। Question number 1, A the equations, A the equilibriums and the role of the diverse deserve and of their the geographical features and such as sand, the dunes and the salt pans on the climates and ecosystem of the regions and they occupy. Reasons they occupy and their the impact on the human statement and traits. Approach. A simple and the straight formats and questions and where the condition need to be the right about the role of the desert and there the features and such as the sand dunes and salt pan on the climate changes and the ecosystem of the regions and impact they had on trade and the human statements. Introduction. A desert and ecosystem is the characterized and by the low precipitations and the high temperatures and with other varieties of the plants and animals life adapted to thus the harsh and the conditions and sand the dunes and can have and the impact on the climates and changes by the trappings and preserving and carbons in the sand and they can also help to the reduce the amount of the carbon in the atmosphere and by acting as other sink and the absorbing and the storing carbon from the atmosphere and body. Dune move and bend the sand grains and on one side and are the picked and up by the winds and the deposited on the other side, but the spread of the movement and varies and greatly and dependent on the factors and including the same and the size of the dunes and moistures and content in the sand and wind spread. Dune movement and can be the dramatically and the showed on the prevented and by the same by the spurs and vegetations and when the vegetations and cover the drop down below and 14% erosions and seed up the significantly and the result is the self and the perspective stings and the system in which the blows and send the smoothers and remainings and the plants and the destroying the ecosystem and the prompting further and ecosystems erosions. The shifting sand are the likely and to the destroys and local the ecosystem making any the kind of thus the shifting sand are the likely to the destroy local the ecosystem making any the kind of the farmings or the others and use of the nearby and land and even more the difficult and they the report in natures. The models included and seasonal variations in the annuals and rainfall and the likely impact of and the increase in the atmospheric greenhouse gases on the temperature. It did not, however, and include the influences of higher carbon dioxide and level on the plant and productivities and nor the human impact and such as the increase in agriculture and surrounding areas fightings the process of the vegetations and laws and the dunes movement and would the required measures the adaptations and says the Thomas and one the possibles and the solution and would be to the plants and new the vegetations and but done the ecosystems and are very the sensitive and offers and differs greatly and from the region to regions and it would take and any many the years and of the carefuls and trainings and to stop other moving dunes and from bendings and around he explained. Natural salt pans and or the salt flats and are the flats expanses of the grounds and covered with the salt and the others minerals and are the found in the desert. And large salt plain are the common in the Sahara's desert and the Kalahari desert and the run of the Kutch and the Western United Instead of the certain parts desired of the Australia and thus are the naturals and formations which are formed by the evaporations of of the water pools and such as other shale lake or ponds. This happen in climates and where the rate of the water evaporation exciting the rate of the precipitations, and if the water sun cannot drain into the ground and it remains on the surface and until it and the evaporates and leaving the behind and minerals and precipitated and from the salt and ions and dissolved and in the waters and over the thousands of years, and the minerals usually salt and the accumulates and on the surface. Thus the minerals and reflects and the suns and rays the through the radiations and often appears as white areas and ecological significant salt pans and play other significant role in the ecologies of the neighboring and areas. Salt pans have different species of the bird and insect and thrivings on them, and they have and the enormous and water holding capacities, and that helps in the food flood and control. Sand dunes in the Kalahari's desert in Africa, and which has been the immobile and for the thousands of the years and will soon start to move again, and researches and worms the wandering dunes and may the affect and hundred of thousands of the pupils in southern Africa and low the precipitation. Desert typically is and receive very the little rainfall, and which can the contribute and to the lack of the vegetations and the high rate of the evaporations, and this can the increase the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And high temperature desert are the known and for their the high temperature which can escalate the rate of the evaporation and the contributes to the formations of the heat waves and the dust storms. And the desert are always known and for their the dust storms, and which can the transport a large amount of the dust and the other particles and into the atmospheres, and thus the particles and can the reflect and sunlight and contribute to the cooling the planets. And researches and have longs the warned and that some of the direst and the poorest part of the world and are the getting drier and causing the desert and to grow. But researchers and wondered and the weathers the anticipated and climate changes the might also the affected the movement of Johnson within the desert. Impact on human statement. Impact on human statement and human the statement in desert are the challenging due to the arid and condition and a lack of the water and which can limit the availabilities of the resources and such as the food and the fuels, and additionally and the harsh living and condition can make it the difficult for the pupils and to the survive in thus the regions. And desert also act as other barriers to the human expansions and help to the preserve and unique the ecosystem and the biodiversity. Researchers and have long the warned and that some of the driest and poorest part of the world and are the getting dry drier causing and desert to the grow and done the movement can be the dramatically and slow on the prevented and by the shrubs and vegetation. When the vegetations and cover the drops and below the 14% and erosions speed up the significantly, and thus shifting sand are likely to the destroyed and local the ecosystem and making any the kind of the farmings or the others use of the nearby land and even more difficult. And the models included and the seasonal variations in the annual rainfall and the likely impact of an increase in the atmosphere and greenhouse gases on temperature. If did not, however, include the influences of the higher carbon dioxide level on the plant and productivity and nor the human impact and such as the increased agriculture in surrounding areas. Local peoples are aware of the problems and but the often act to the warseed and it the large scale and ships the farming in the northern part of the South Africa and for example reduced available ships available ground sheep farming ground waters and because it is the require extensive well diggings fightings the process of the vegetations and loss and the dune and movement and would the required measures adaptations and once the possible solutions and would be to the plant and new the vegetations and but the duns and ecosystem are very the sensitive and differs the greatly and from the regions and to the regimes and it would take and many the years of the careful training to the stop other moving done and from the wanderings and around additionally decident can also the impact and human the statement and through there's the arid and condition and lack of the resources and however and they also can act as the barriers to the human expansion and can help to the preserve and unique the ecosystem and biodiversity conclusion desert have played a significant role in the human statement and trade the thought out and history and due to their the harsh and the conditioned and reserved desert and have often been and viewed other barriers to the human migrations and the ecosystem activities and however the many the desert and have also the served and as the important trade and routes for the caravans and merchants and connecting different regions and the cultures and evolutions the role of the plateaus and the highlanded in the shippings in the climates vegetations and the human statement pattern of the regions and they the occupy approach candidate can start the answer and with the giving basics ideas and about the plateau and highlands and then the simply and the highlights its the role in the shaping climate vegetations and human statement introductions and plateaus on the plateaus and also the cold other high plain or other tableland is in the areas of other highland and consisting of flats and terrain that is the raised and the sharply about the surroundings areas on at least one side body shaping climates and the plateau and the highlanded and typically have other coolers and the drier and climates than the surrounding lowlands and due to their the elevations and this can the limits and the type of the vegetations and that can the grow and with the forest and giving way to the grasslanded and the shrublands and this is the due to the facts and that as the air rises it is the cool and the moistures and condensed and producing the clouds and the precipitations and how evers and as airs the continues to the rise and it can cool and so so much that the moisture and the condenses and into the snow and the ice rather than rain and the reducing the amounts of the precipitations and that the reaches the ground the highlight and the plateau and can also create the local weathers and pattern due to the relief and of the terrains and tending leading to the formation of clouds and the precipitations in the certain areas and while the other areas and remains dry additionally and they can act as other barriers and to the prevailing winds and causing them to the rise and cools and leading to the formation of the clouds and precipitations on the windwards windward side of the highlands or the plateaus and while the leewards and side remains dry and the high altitude of the highlands and the plateaus and also means and that the temperature tend to drop and with the altitude and creating other colder and the climates at the higher elevations and this can lead and to the formations of glacier and the permanents and show feed. Thus, region may also have the unique and the microclimates and the biodiversity human statement pattern in the plateaus. In plateau and highlanded and tend to be the sparse and as the rugged and the terrain and the harsh climates and make the agricultural and the economic and development difficult and shaping vegetation. The lower temperatures and the lowers and precipitations reads it the higher elevations and can the limits the type of the vegetations and that can the grow and typically and as one the goes and up in the elevations and forest and give the ways and to the grassland and the shrublands and the alpines and the tundra and forest and which is the thrives in the warmer and the more humid and the environments and are the typically found at the lower elevations and are the replaced and by the grasslanded and the shrublands and as the elevations and increase the shrublands and the grasslanded are the adaptation to the drier and the cooler conditions and are the characterized by the tough hardy and plants then can the survives and in the harsher and environment in the additions and highlands and the plateaus often have the unique microclimates and due to their the topography and which can lead to the high levels of the biodiversity and with many the endemic species and found only in thus the regions and thus the microclimates and can also the create the local weathers and pattern and leading to the formation of the clouds and the precipitations in the certain areas and while others the areas and remains dry and which can the affects the vegetation human statement thus the resigns and may be the important of for the resources and extractions and such as the minings and grazings and they may also be the used for the protection and the conservations and additionally some the highlands and the plateau and region are also now for their the culture spirituals and historical significance and which attract the tourism they may also be the used for the protections and the conservations of natural resources as well as for recreationals and the activities such as the hikings and the mountainings and human statement in plateau and the highlanded tends to be the sparse and due to the harsh climates and the rugged and terrains and thus the reasons and are the often difficult to the cultivate and the lack of the waters and research and resources and can make the economically development difficult. Conclusion plateau and the highlanded and sharps the climate vegetations and the human statement human statement pattern and of the regions and they the acquired humans they are the essentials. Occupy through the evaporation and the unique microclimates and making them and less the hospitalizations and for the humans habitations and but more for the specific plants and the animals and species and also for the resources and extractions and protections and tourism. Question third discuss the impact of the volcanics and the activities and the formation of the volcanic landscapes on the geology climates and the ecosystems of the regions and they the occupied and how it is the affected and human statement and the economically development. Candidate can start the answers and with the givings and the basic ideas of the volcanics and then the writes and down how and it's the impact and geologies and the climates and also the write and down and how it's the positively and negatively and affected the human statement. Cow cow toilet. Candidate can start the answer and with giving the basic ideas of the volcanics and then the writes and down and how it is the impact and the geology and climates also and write down and how it is the positively and the negatively and affected the human statement. Introductions. A volcano is in the openings or the ruptures and in the earth surface, and there the lava and the magmas and hold the liquid and the semi-liquid rocks and the volcanics is and the gases and to the escapes and the volcanic eruptions and could have the implications and for the locals and the regional environment like the earthquakes, landslide and lahar the mud flows and as the thunderstorms and body climate and the ecosystem due to the volcanic activities. The gases and the dust particles and throw into the atmospheres and during the volcanic eruptions and have the influences on the climates and volcanic have also the caused and global warming over millions of the years during the time in the earth and history and when the extreme account of the volcanics and occurred and releasing greenhouse and gases into the atmosphere. Even the throw and volcanoes are in the specific and places and on the earth and there the effects and can be the more widely and distributed and as the gases and dust and the ash gets and into the atmospheres and this is this is due to the atmospheric circulations and pattern the eruptions and in the tropics and can have and the effect on the climates in the both hemispheres and the eruption at the mid or the high and the altitude and only have and the impact on the hemispheres and they are the within and geology and the landscapes and due to the volcanic activities. Volcanic eruption can the created new the landforms and such as the volcanics and the iceland and mountain and the deposits and layers of the ash and the lavas and which can the changes the soil compositions and fertility. Volcanic activities can also created the new minerals and deposits such as the gold, silver, copper and the other metals and which can the becomes and the important resources for the humans and civilizations. Thus, minerals and the deposits and can the forms in different ways and for examples and in the form of the veins and the loaded as well as in the forms of the volcanic hosted and massive the sulfide deposits. The volcanics ash and the rock fragmented and can also the change the albedos of the region and which can the affected the regionals and climates and volcanic activity can also the create and the geothermals and areas and which can be the used for the power generation and other the forms of the economics development. Additionally, volcanic landscapes and often have the unique biodiversity and with many the endemics and species found only in this region. However, volcanic activities and can also be the hazardous and to humans the statement and can lead to the destruction event and such as the volcanic eruptions. As well and the layers and the volcanic gas and the emissions and thus the event can the cause and the significant damage to the infrastructures and agriculture human health मुंह में ही भिड़ नहीं है and can lead to the displacement of the population. खाली खा आ रही है यार volcanics and gas the emissions and thus the event can the causes and the significant and damage to the infrastructures and agriculture and human and human health, and can lead to the displacement and of the pollution. Displacement of the pollution, economic development and human statement. Economic development and human statements. Volcanic activities. The volcanic activities and the formations of the volcanic landscapes and can have both and the positives and the negatives impact on the human statement and the economically development, and while they can be the inhospitals and the hazardous and to the humans and the habitations, and they can also the provided and the opportunities and for the economically development, and for examples and the volcanic ash and the rock fragments and can be the used and for the constructions and the road building, and the volcanics and the landscapes and often and have the unique. Human statement and economic development, and by they can be the in hospitals and the hazards are to the human habitations, and they can also the provide and the opportunities for the economic development, and for example and the volcanic gas and the rock fragmented and can be the used for the constructions and can be utilized and for the tourism and the recreations, and volcanic the landscapes and can also the curtain and the geothermals resources, and which can be the used and for the power generation and the other forms of the economic development. Volcanic eruptions and can causes the significant damage to the infrastructures and culture and agricultures and the human health, can lead to the displacement of the populations, and additionally the rough and terrain and the harsh and the climates of the volcanic landscapes and can make it the difficult and for the people to the settle in the regions. In conclusion, most of the active volcanoes on the earth and occurs on the circum-Pacific world, and also the referred and to as the rings or the fires and volcanoes. But development and the disaster risk, and most of the active and the volcanoes and on the earth occurs and on the circums and the Pacific belt, and also the refers and to aid the ring of the fires and volcanoes and are a the natural organics and the phenomenon that cannot be the avoided, and but the developing research disaster risk and the resiliences, and with the surely and be the step in the right direction and evolutions. Question number 4: evaluate the effect and of the solar activities and including the sunspot and the solar flares and coronals and the mass ejections and on the earth and the atmosphere, and its the implication for the human civilization. A simple strength and the but questions and where the condition in to the right about the effect of the solar activities and sunspots and solar flares and the coronals and mass and ejections on the earth atmospheres and its the affected on the human civilization introductions. A solar storms is used to the refers and to the atmospheric effect and there are that are the visible or the earth and through the certain events and that the occurs on the surface of the sun and solar storms and happen when the sun and the emits and the large burst of the energy in the form of the solar flares and the coronals and mass and the ejections and in the adverse effect of the solar systems and is the disruptions of the satellites and the other electronic means of the communication body. What are the effect of the solar activities on the earth and the auroras? When charges particles and from other CME and the reached areas and near the earth and they can triggers and instance the light in the sky and cold the auroras and affected the electronics and the electronic and the satellites and the energies and the radiation and high energies particles emitted and by the flares and can the affected the earth and the bound objected and the life on the earth and it can be the affect the electronic within the satellites and the affected and the astronauts. Failures of the power grids and vary the powerful and the earth and directed and the coronals and mass the in ejections and can the causes and the failures of the powers and grid and the affected oils and the pipeline and deep the sea cables and इतनी जोर से बात मत करो ठीक है फिर इंसान चिड़िया कर दे sunspot and the solar flares and the coronals and the mass and the ejections and their the influences on the earth. Coronals and the mass and the ejections coronals and the mass and ejection and so left and the solar flares and the are extremely large and the explosions and on the photospheres and in just other few minutes and the flares and heat to the several millions and degrees and f and the released as the such as the much energy as the billions and the megatons of anti TNT and they the occurs near the sunspot and usually aid the dividing the lines and between the areas of the oppositely and directed and magnetic field and hold the matters and called the plasmas and interacted with the magnetic field and sending the burst of the plasmas up and the away and from the sun is the form of the flares. Solar flares and emits the X-ray. पढ़ने हो तो पढ़ो हाँ फालतू बकवास करवे इसका वो ए ले They occurs near the sunspot, usually at the dividing the line and between the areas of the opportunities and directed magnetics and the field and hot matters the code the plasma then interact and with the magnetic field and sending other burst of the plasma then up and the away from the sun. From the sun is the forms of the affairs and solar the flares. Solar flares and the emits an X-ray and the magnetic field and which the bombard the earth as the geomagnetics and storms. Geomagnetic storms and activities for the earth and therefore the during and sunspots. maximum the earth and will see in the increase and in the northern and the southern lights and the possibles and the disruptions and in the ratios and transmissions and the power grid the storm and can even the changes and polarities and in the satellites and which can damages and the sophisticated and electricals. Therefore, the scientists and build the options and time the prepositions and satellites and do the different orientations to protect them and from the increase in solar radiation when the strong solar flares and or the coronals and mass ejections has occurred an impact of the solar flares and the CMES and on the earth. Not all the solars and the flares and reach the earth and but the solar flares and storm the solar energetics and particles and SEPs and high the speed solar winds and the coronals and mass the ejections and CMES and there the comes and close and can the impact space the weathers in the near earth space and the upper atmospheres and space the dependent and the services in solar storms and can hit the operations of the space dependent and the services and like the globals and the positioning system and the GPS and the radio and can the satellite and communications and radio communication geomagnetics and the storms and interfere and with high and the frequency ratio and communication and the navigations GPS and the navigation system and the magnetospheres and the CMES and with the ejecti lights and load and with the meters and traveling it the millions of the miles and the hours and can the potentially and created the disturbances in the magnetospheres the protest अब सही है magnetospheres in the protest and radio communications and geomatical storms and interfere with the high and fragmenty and ratio and the communications and the GPS navigation system and the magnetospheres and CMES and with the ejectiles and loaded with the matters and traveling it the millions of the miles and the hours and can the potentially created the disturbances in the magnetospheres and the protective and the sheets and surrounding the earth and the astronaut on the spacewalk and face the health and risk and from the possibles and the exposures and to the solar radiation and outside the earth and the protecting atmospheres other the aircraft and the flighting power and grid and the space explorations and the programs and are the vulnerable effects of the interplanetaries and the coronals mass and the ejections and on the earth and the geomagnetics and the storms and caused by the shocks and wave of the moving and mass and which may also disturb and earth the magnetospheres and the auroras and in the vast and areas surrounding the earth and the magnetic poles and solar the genetics and the particles can create the extremely the powerful auroras and in the northern hemisphere and thus are known as the northern lights and the auroras and the borealis and the whereas in the southern hemisphere and they are the known as the southern light and the aurora australis and disruptions of the radio transmissions and damage to the satellites and damage to the electrical transmissions and line the facilities and implications on the human civilizations very high energy than the particles and such as those and the carried by the coronals and mass the ejections and can the causes radiations and poisonings to humans and the other mammals and when other coronals mass and ejections and strikes earth and the atmosphere and it is causes other temporary disturbances of the earth and the magnetic field. It can throw the satellite of course and the cues and them to the fell and to the surface of the earth and putting the many urban center at the centers aid the risk and some the scientists and have the speculated and there the migrating and animals and which use the magneto and receptions and to the navigates and such as such as birds and the honeybees and might also be the affected and repeatedly and the functionings and geomagnetic field and can the produce and geomagnetically introduce the current in the pipelines, and this can the causes and multiple problems for the pipelines engineers, and pipelines flow the matters and can the transmits and the errors and flow information and the corrosion rate of the pipelines and can be the dramatically and increase the conclusion. Fortunately, and no matters and what the flares and do not have other significant effect on the earth and atmospheres and more or the less acts and as other shield and to prevent the cosmetics and radiations and from the reaching the surface, and there can be the missiles and affected at the grounds and levels and but the amount of the radiation is the purities and the insufficiency, and the question number 5 evaluation. Question number 5 evaluates the effect of the global warming and its the impact on the earth and the geophysicals and the phenomena such as the sea levels and rise, the melting of the glaciers and the permafrost and changes in the precipitation patterns. Approach candidate can start the answers and with the giving basic ideas and idea about the global warming, and then the highlights and how it is the impacting globals on the different geophysicals and the phenomena and what the changes has the occurs due to it. Introductions. Global warming, also known as the climate changes, it is the gradual increase of the earth and average surface temperature, and due to the warming of the fossil fuel and other the human activities, the effect of the global warming and can have a significant impact on the earth and the geophysical phenomenon body. Global warming can have other wide ranges of the impact on the earth and geophysical phenomenon including and sea level rise, and as the earth and the temperature increase, the ice and the snows in the polars resign and begin to the melt and causing sea levels to rise, and this can have other significant impact on the coastal area, as it can lead into the fighting and the erosions. Extreme weathers and global warmings and can lead to and the increase in the frequency and the severities of the extreme weather event, and such as the heat and waves, the drought and heavy precipitations, and this can have other significant impact on the agricultures and the food production as well as the human health and the well-being in the oceans, and the acidification as carbon dioxide and CO2 is the absorbed by the oceans, and it can lead to other decrease in the pH level of the sea waters and other process known as the oceans and the acidifications. इधर ही रख दो, इधर उसमें डिब्बे में क्या नाम है, इधर इधर डिब्बे में रख दो, इधर वो डिब्बा है ना कार्टून के, पटक दो इसमें. Acidification, this can have a significant impact on the marine life, and as it can make it and the more and difficult for the shellfish and the others organism to form and the maintain their the cell and wildfire global warming and can lead to the ideas. सलोनी सामान दे दी. Wildfires and global warming and can lead to and the increase in the frequency and the severities of the wildfires, and this can have other significant impact on the humans communities as well as wildlife and their the habitat and the climates introduce climates introduce and migrations, and climate changes can lead to the implementations of the pupils and to the extreme weather event and sea levels rise and the other impacts, and this can lead into the increased and the pressure on the infrastructures and resources in receiving and areas and can lead to the conflict. Glacier retreat, and as the earth and temperature increase and glacier and the ice sheets and begin to the melt and causing them to retreat, and this can have other significant. This can have other significant impact on the fresh waters and availability and the funding and the flooding in the downstream areas, and that really on the glaciers and melt water and changes in the precipitations and patterns, and global warming can lead to the changes in precipitations pattern and such as the increase and the droughts. क्या कर रहा है? गाड़ी चाहिए था भैया फिर भी तो गाड़ी है यार कहाँ कर दी तूने increased drought in the some regions and also heavy the clouds and winds and with the flash flood. Hey, गिर मत जाइए. Flash floods and the climates and the variabilities. Climates and the variabilities. Global warming can cause the change in the precipitations and pattern leading to the more extremes and weathers and events. Weather events and such as flood and the drought and loss of the biodiversity, and global warming can cause changes in temperature and precipitations and patterns, and which can lead to the loss of the habitat and for many and the plants and animals species and animals disasters, and global warming can increase the frequency and the severity of the natural disasters such as the wildfires and the hurricanes and the typhoons, which can cause the significant damage into the infrastructures and the communicate and conclusion. रखी रहने दो ऐसी वो कर ले सही समझ. Humankind has become the dependent and on the warmings of the fossil fuel to support our the ways and of life, and but it increased the global warming it and the unnatural rate that lead and to the meltings and of the glaciers, and to the restore the glacier, and we need to the utilize the alternative energies and the sources increase our the energy and efficiency and decrease our the individual's carbon footprints. खाई रही जी कैसी बहने हैंगी यार कैसी मोड़ी हैंगी जी इन्हें दिखाई नहीं देता बिल्कुल यार रे जल जल के पूरे इसे ही दे तो Discuss the causes of the consequences of the El Ninos and the La Ninos, and two of the most important geophysical phenomena that affected the global climate. Candidates can start the answer and with giving the basic ideas of the El Ninos and the La Ninos with its the formations, and then the simply explain what are its and the causes and the different consequences. Introduction. El Nino and the La Nino are the two natural climate phenomena and occurring across the tropical Pacific and oceans, and the influences the weathers, and they are to the opposing weather pattern, and that can have and significant an impact on the weather pattern around the world. Around the world. Body El Nino. El Nino is caused and by other warmings and of the surface water in the eastern Pacific Oceans, and which is lead to other shift in the prevailing and the wind and the changes in the location. In the location and strength of the jet stream, and this can the lead to increase the rainfall in the western Pacific and the drought in the eastern Pacific and Nino, and can also the result in the increase and storms the activities in the eastern Pacific, and can have other ranges of impact on the weathers on weather pattern and around the world, and such as the increase in rainfall in some the regions and drought in the others, and La Ninos is the opposite of El Ninos and is the caused and by other coolings of the surface and water is the patterns eastern Pacific Ocean, and this lead into the shift in the prevailing winds and the changes in location and strength of the jet streams, and which can lead to the drought in the western Pacific and increase the rainfall in the eastern Pacific, and La Nino can also the result in decreased storm activities in the eastern Pacific, and can have other range of the impact on weathers and patterns and around the world, and such as the increase in droughts in the summer region and increase the rainfall in the others. Impact on global climates. During and the El Nino event, and the trade winds and that the usually blow the east and to the west across the Pacific beacons and over the even rivers. And this allow and the warms and water and from the western Pacific and to the move easternward and the towards and the coast of the South America, and leading to and the increase in the temperature and other shift in the weather patterns. El Nino can result in the increase in rainfall in the some and regions such as the southern United States, and drought in the others, and such as the Australia and the Indonesia, and it can also lead to increase the storm activities in the eastern and the Pacific, and can have other range of the impact on the weathers and patterns around the world, and such as the increased floodings in some the regions and drought in the others, and La Ninos on the other hand is the characterized by the coolings of the surface and water in the Eastern Pacific Ocean, and which led to the strengthening of the lead trade and wind and other shift in the weather pattern. La Nino can result in increase in rainfall in the some regions and such as the Western Pacific and drought in the others and such as the Southern United States. It can also lead to the decrease in storm activities in the Eastern Pacific and can have a range of impact or the weathers. Impact or the weather or the weathers or the weathers and around the world and such as increased and drought in the some regions and the increased flooding in others. And El Nino and are the India's and monsoon are the inversely unrelated. The most prominent drought in India and six of them and since the 1871 and have been El Nino and the drought and including the recent ones in the 2002 and 2009. And however, not all the El Nino years and lead to the droughts and in India. For instance, 1997 and 98 and was other strong El Ninos and years, and but there was no drought and because of the IOD and El Ninos and direct impact on India's the agrarians and economics and as it stands to the lowers and the productions and of the summer crops and such as the rice and sugar canes, cottons and the oilseed. La Nino impacting the India's and winter the rainfalls and is less than the normal in the northern India's and snowfall and over the western Himalayas is less than the northern. The winter temperatures in the plains and are less than the normal conclusions, and both El Ninos and the La Ninos and can have the significant impact on the agriculture, freshwater resources and human statement as well as and on the timings and the distributions of the plant and animal species. They can also impact the fishing and the tourism industrials as well as the global economic and trade. The guy motu भी ऐसी है और बेबी भी ऐसी है, ये ऐसी है कैसे बरगा पेंट ले आइयो. Analyzes the factor and the responsible for the concentrations and of the automobile industries in the certain regions of the world and the introducing and the role of the laborers and the availability cost of the production and the access to the market and the resources. खसमान से फुर्सत हुई तब तो a simple strength word and the question and where the condition need to the write about the factors and responsible for the concentrations of the automobile. A simple strength forwards and the question where the condition and need to the write about the factor and responsible for the concentrations of the automobile industry in the certain region of the world and the role of the labor availability cost of the production and the access to the market and the resources. मैं तो कछु The automobile industry is highly and concentrated and in other few countries and with the majorities and of the productions and taking places in the China, the United States and Japan, Germany and the South Korea's and account and 60% of the world global automobiles productions and the others players and include India and the Brazil etc. Many factors responsible and for their the concentration in the figures. हाँ तुम हो गई पागल जब मैं तो इतनी जोर जोर से चला रहा हूँ, दिख नहीं रहा हो तुम्हें कछु. और ये तो ऐसे होता घूमने लग रहे हैं तो मैं दूध ना देखो था ना, हाँ गैस पे जा कमरा से बकमरा में, और बे लोग आएंगे बे हीरोनी बे भी ये तो ऐसे होता घूमने लग रहे हैं मैंने गैस ना दूध नहीं दिख रहा, मोबाइल जरूर दिख रहा है। हाँ तो मैं भी अंधी हूँ, ठीक है। हाँ हाँ मैं भी अंधी हूँ, ठीक है, फालतू बोलने की जरूरत नहीं है मुँह से। मैं भी अंधी हो गई अब, मुँह भी नहीं दिखे आपका चू। Discuss the impact of the energy cost and the government policies on the location of oil the refineries and how it is the affected the global oil industries. Candidates and can start the answer and with the giving basic and ideas and about the locations of the oil industries. अंधी हो गई ना फिर मुँह से बोल का नहीं बा होगा जो होगा। And refineries and how cost and the policies and impacting global oil industries. Introduction. Energy cost and the government policies and have other significant impact on the locations of oil the refineries which in the affected and the global oil industries and body. Energy cost and the policies are the major factors in the locations of the oil refineries. Oil refineries required and the large amount of the energy and to the operate, and the cost of the energy and can the significantly impact their the profitability, and therefore oil the refineries are the often unlocated in the regions and with the low energies cost, such as the Gulf Coast of the United States, and which has the access to the low cost natural gas. Government policies and also play a significant role in the locations of the oil refineries, and government regulations and the taxes can affect the profitability of the oils and the refineries, and therefore the influences and where they are the located. And for example, some the government provided tax breaks and or the subsidies and to the oil refineries in the orders to the attract them to the the regions, and additionally governments and may have the restrictions and on the location of the oil refineries, and such as the joinings low and the which can the affected and where they are the but and the locations of the oil refineries and can also the have and the impact on the global oil industries. For example, if most oil the refineries and are the located in the one regions and such as the East Middle East Middle East, and it can the created other dependency on there the reasons and for oil the products. And additionally, and if oils refineries are the located close to the sources and of the oil productions and such as in the Gulf of the Mexico, and it can the make the transformations and of the oil more efficiency and the cost effective which can the benefits the globals and oil industries, and the global policies and the incentives and global regulations and taxes and incentives and can affect the profitables and of the oil refineries, and therefore the influence and where they are the located. For example, some government provided tax breaks and or the subsidies and to the oil the refiners and in the orders and to the attract them to the there the regions, and environmental regulations and compliance and coasties and oil the refineries and are the subjected and to the strict environmental regulations, and so they are the often and located in the regions and which lays the stringent and the regulations and or where the government is the willing to provide incentives and for the environmental company compliances, and thus the regulations and the compliances and cost can have the significant impact on the operatings and the expenses of the refineries and energy cost. And the cost of energy important factors to the consider and when it's the comes into the location of the oil refineries, and the refineries and location in the region and with the lowers and energy and cost can have a the competitive advantage in the terms of their the operating expenses. And conclusion in conclusion in nutshells, and the locations of the oil refineries in the influences by the energy cost and governments policies and other the factors and which in the terms and can the affected the global oil industries and influencing the cost in the availability of the oil productions and the in dependencies and of other certain and reasons and for oils the production. And question number 9 evaluates the role of the technologically advancement and the international trade agreement on the location of the high-tech industrials and particularly in the field of the information technology and semiconductor approach. Candidate can start the answer and with giving the basic ideas of the food values and chain, also with the giving and the examples and highlighted the challenging of the with the FPI in India. Introductions and the locations of the industries aid the particular place in the result of the number of the decisions and taken at the various levels, and there are the certains and known the geographical spectrum such as the technology and the advancement and the agreemented and that the facilitate this decisions making body. Technological advancement and international trade agreement have had either significant impact on the location of the high-tech industries. Technology advancement and have made it the possible and for the companies to the produce and the distributed productions and the services more efficiency and had at other lower cost, and which has led into the decentralization of the production and the emergence of the global supply chain. This has allowed and high tech the industries and to the locates in the areas and which with lower and the labors and costed and such as the developing and the countries, and while the steels and wings the hours to the access and the advanced technologies and the specialized and the inputs and from the others and countries and international trades and the agreement and such as the North America Free Trade Agreement and NAFTA and the World Trade Organization WTO have also the played other roles in the location of the high tech industries, and thus the agreement have reduced the trade barriers and introduced the access to the foreign market and market making it is the easiest for the companies to locate production in the countries and with the lower levels and costs, and then the exports and there the products and to there's the to other the countries, and this has led and to the growth of the high tech industries in the countries and such as the China's and the Mexico, in which have become the majors and exporters of the high tech production, and moreover the increasing and use of the digitals and technologies and in the increasing trends of the outsourcings and the offshorings and have the allow companies and to the relocate and there the high tech and industries to the cheapest locations. This has led and to the growth of the high tech industries in the countries and such as the India's, and where the labor costs are the relatively and low, and there is other large pool of the skills and workers and with the expertise in the areas and such as the software development and data analysis and semiconductor and IT industries, and access to the R&D and the advancement and the semiconductor and IT industries really and the heavily on the R&D to stay the competitions and developed new the technologies and location with the strong and R&D and the capabilities and resources such as the universities and research centers, and are the more likely to the extract semiconductor and IT companies agreement and the policies stabilities, and semiconductors and the companies are looking for the locations and has that have other stables and political environment and robust the security and measures to protect there the asset and intellectual properties, and government agreement and many the government offers in various tariffs and such as the taxes bricks and the subsidized and to attract high tech industries and to there's the resigns and locations, and there the offers attractive incentives and packages and are more likely to the attract it and semiconductor companies. Conclusion: in the summary, and the technological advancement and the international trade agreements and have led to the decentralizations of high tech industries and the growth of the high tech industries in the countries, and with the labors and with the lower labors and cost, as well as the increase and access to the foreign market and the specialized inputs. Describing the question number 10, describe the distributions of the rubber at the producing countries indicated the major and the environment issues and faces by them and approach a simple strength forward questions and where's the candidates and needs to the right about the distributions of rubber and the producing countries, and in the second part and write about major environment issues and faced by them and introduction according to the FAO and state and food and the agriculture organization corporate and the statisticals and the database of the 2022, and Thailand is the largest producers of the rubber in the world, followed by the Indonesia, Vietnam and Ivory and Coast and the Malaysia and India, China etc. There are the major environmental issues in thus the countries and including the deforestation, biodiversity loss and climate changes etc. body natural rubber and the contributes to the deforestations and the biodiversity loss and the pollution and more, and but the climate changes and diseases also the threatened natural rubber and producing the countries, and there are the 28 countries and worldwide that produce the naturals and rubbers, and the most district and the characterized and they shares is other tropical climates and tropical climates and with the consist and the temperature around the 25 to 30 degrees and rainfall of the 200 centimeter and support the healthy rubbers and trees and countries, and with this the ideals and equatorial climates and that the produced natural rubber are found primarily in South America, Africa and the Southern Asia, and for the decades and the Thailand has been the world biggest producers of the rubber, growing 35% of the world natural rubber supply in 2019. The top 5 countries and that the produce the most rubber in 2019 are Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, India and China, and measure the environmental issues faces and by thus the countries are the deforestations and growing the natural rubber is leading the causes of the deforestation in the mainlanded South Asia. Biodiversity loss and rubbers is the growth and for the deforestation of the equatorials and the vegetations and which and are the noun and for their the species biodiversity climate changes and deforestation of the equatorials and vegetations and which are the noun and as the lungs of the forest and will the affected the carbon and sequestrations, and this the accentuated and the rate of the global warming disaster rubber and being other monocultures and the plantation is highly the vulnerable to the pest attack and the diseases and man animals and conflict the man monkey and the humans conflict in the drippers and the because of the deforestations of the land and for the rubber plantations and plantation and causes of the stealings of the land from the indigenous and the communities, and pollutions and the sulfate are the released from the latex and the processing facilities and the latex and are the extracted and from the rubber trees a large scale of the natural rubber and plantations and result in the environmental issues and such as the nitrous and oxide and N2O and the emission and which is the obtained and from the use of the synthetics and the fertilizers and during the cultivations and process. The postulates and of the environmental and the coordinates and cups and EKC and was the employed and to the examine the relationship and between the economic and the environment from the natural rubbers plantation in measure the producers using the secondary data ranking and from the 2005 to 2018, and therefore the N2O emissions in the which representations and environmental degradations was the regressed and with the value of the natural rubble and productions and as the proxy and for the economics and growth and using other fixed and the effect and models on the panels and data and the regressions analysis result and show that there is other inverted and U shapes and curve from the relationship between the N2O and emissions and the value of the naturals and rubbers productions, and hence this the study and support the postulates of the EKC hypothesis in the addition result and found that the averages value of the natural rubbers and productions and from the majors producers and was not 8 and reached the turning point of the EKC. Some suggestions and wares the made in the orders to increase the productivity and while the maintaining aid the reducing the emissions and obtained from the use of the synthetics and fertilizer during the cultivation process. Conclusion: the best way to the ensure and more the responsible productions of the natural rubber is to the grow and trees and for the rubbers and productions on the low and qualities and degradations land instead of the clearings and high qualities natural forest to the plants and them. WWF and goals is to have the majorities of the companies that produced and use rubbers and commits and to the ethically and the sustainables and the produced and rubber, and this the includes and car manufacturers and tires and max and the rubbers and procedure. Discuss the multidimensionals and the implications of the universe and the distributions of the minerals oil in the world. And approach start with the basic intro and with the reference and to the minerals and oil the distributions, and then the explains and how and the universe distribution have the several multiples and the implications. Discuss the multidimensional and implications of the universe distributions of the miners oil in the world. Start with the basic intro and with the reference and to the miners oil and distributions, and then they explain how universe and the distributions have the several multiple implications. Introduction. Petrol is the univentually and the distribution around the planets and the Middle East and the concerned the slightly and less than the half of the world, and the proven reserve introduces the Irans and but not the North Africas and followed the Middle East and are the Canadas and the United States and the Latin America, Africa, and the former Soviet Union's region, and which is the includes and the Russia, Kazakhstan, and others the countries body. The immense of the strategic importance of the miners oil and its the top and sided distribution across the globals and have the many and the multi dimensions, the implications and the politicals, many historical and the presented day conflict and involve the nation and trying to the control and resources and reach the territories, and for example the decided for the dimensions and oil resources has been the root of the many armed and the conflict in Africa and USA, and the interferer in the geopolitics of the West Asia is the also one of the reason, and for the universe and the distributions of oil minerals and employment of the migration availability of the oil resources reserved and lead and to the more and job opportunity in the Middle East, and that is the reasons and why India has other large and diasporas and in the Middle East, and balance of the trade and the UN in events and the distributions of the minerals oil and the resources affected the balance of the trade between the importing and the exporting and countries, and this in the turn affected the foreign exchange reserve of the countries and growth, and UN even the distribution of the mineral oil also has led to the uneven growth access into the globals and rise in the important prices directly. Prices directly and the events. Price directly and the hamper the capabilities of the environments and to spread on the welfare objectives and the energy security, and the UN events and the distributions of the mineral energy and resources has led to the high degrees. Diplomatic leverage. The top sided and the distributions of the vital minerals and oil the resources is the vitals and functions to the laboring and is laborings, and it is the abilities and for the diplomatic gains and for example for example, India major and the independence on the Middle East and for the oils and provided full oil provide it with other diplomatic and the diplomatic version over Indian economic implications and unions and the distributions of the mineral oil across the world and the lead to the economic and consequences and like the inflammations and for the importings and countries and for the examples, and India is the susceptible to the global shocks and in oil the prices and reason the conflict and is the minerals and oils, and research is the strengthening in the natures, and it is the unions and the distributions leads to the great powers and conflict over the control of the reason. For the example, disputed in oil the reasons of Middle Eastern conclusion. As the uneven distributions of the mineral oil and resources lead to the various implications and rangings and from the economically to energy and the security, this the highlights the need and for the India's to the diversities in it is the energy and basket and both in the terms of the contact and geography. 12. India is well and the endowed and with the fresh water and resources the critically examines and why it is the still and suffer from the water scarcities, and candidates and can the start the answered and by the basically and referring to Indian water and resources, and then the shortly analyzes the causes of the water scarcities and introductions. India's average and total the annual rainfall and which is the highest than the world average of the 919 and and should the normally is the suffice and to meet the countries and criticals need, and India has the enough and fresh waters to the meet, and it is the need and but the problems and is the unique quals and the distributions and the sporadic natures of the monsoons and body. India is other monsoonal countries and with the abundant and the surface and the grounds and water across, and it is the length and the breadth and it is the count. It is the accountant for the 18% of the world populations and about the 4% of the world water resources and water the resources, and in India and the include the precipitations and surface the groundwaters and the storage and hydropowers and the potential in India receiving and the averages and rainfall of the about and 70 mm which corresponds to and the annuals and the precipitations of about precipitations and of about of about 4,000 BCMs and the billions and the cubic meters and including the snowfall, and as per the latest and the assessment and the annuals and the in seawalls and the ground and water and resources and of the countries has been the estimated is the 433 billions and the cubic meters and CVS. Causes of the water scarcities and the unique water distribution is most of the rainfall and that is the received in India is the distributed over other special time and the areas the levels of the waters and tables rises during rainfalls and rainfall month and but then the decrease and when there is no the rainfall and over polluted crisis in which the create and the pressure on the natural resources and add to the problems of the water scarcity due to the insufficient irrigation and techniques and the small holding and for the agriculture over the exploitation of the groundwaters is in the practice, and this has the lowered the water table and leading to the conflict and between the demand and from industry agriculture and domestic sector and lack of the recycling and capacities and for used and water and the low emphasis water and the low emphasis and on the water treatment and reuse along with the dumping and of the municipals and the industrial wastes in the water and bodies has lied has lead to the reductions and in the inputs and to the water resources, low awareness and about the rainwater harvesting and water the usage efficiency coupled coupled and with the increasing the pursuing the powers of the purpose, the powers of the pupils and has the increase in demand the leading to the magnification of the problems, increasing geogenic groundwaters and pollutions and as well as the increasing the rivers and pollutions limited the utilizations and water in the countries and the concentrations and in the urban areas and the encroachment and of the water bodies in the both urban and the rural areas and not only the prevent and the surface storage and the groundwater and the recharge and but also the causes and disasters like the floods and the Guwahati and diapers waste and for the example is used by the municipals and the corporations to the dump solid wastes and the climate changes increase the incidence of the droughts and the reduced animals and precipitations and in the drought and prone the central and the northwest India's the water harvestings and reuse the technologies is still a luxury in India's and the pupils and the rurals and the smalls and towers and face the hardships and for the purchase and use and the repairs because of the less motivations and amongst the both and public the officials and the generals publics and for use of the thus equipment way forward water use the efficiency in the agriculture and can be the ensured and by the making farmers and aware and by the providing them and on the grounds and technologies and like the one related to the water and resistance crops and in the situ water and conservations and techniques and likes the rain water harvestings and check the dams and need to be the continued managing the demands and side of the water and management is the crucial and as the India's and cannot increase the per capita availability of the water and the highways and bazaar models and like the replications and where the village and very well managed and the 300 and 400 millimeters and of the rainfall that it is the receiving every years. Conclusion: the government need to the holistically and handles the supply as well as the demand and side of the water management and everybody is in the societies and the central government and the state government waters and beings the state and subjected and citizens NGOs and the companies and needs to the come together and to take us the water crisis in the country. Question number 13. Discuss the various and the technological plates and the boundaries and their the impact on the world and physical geography, including the example of the significant geological events and such as the earthquakes and the volcanoes and approach. A simple straightforward and questions where the conditions and need to the write about the various tectonics and plates and the boundaries and their the impact on the words and physical geography in the second parts and write there the impact on the earthquakes and volcanoes. Introductions: the age and where to the plants plates meets and are known as the place boundaries. The majority of the geological and events such as the volcanic earthquake and the mountain formation occurs at the plates and the boundaries and there are the three types of the plates and boundaries and divergent and convergent and the transport plate boundaries. Body: a plate boundaries is other three and the dimension surface or the zones and where the velocities and speed or the directions of the one lithosphere spherics and plates and relatives and to the neighboring and the lithospheric plates and changes significantly as the high temperature deforestation formations and the mechanism become more the prominent and then the nears and surface brittles and the mechanism of the fracturings and faultings and the catalytics and flow the breadth of thus the plates and the boundaries and may expand with the depth. Type of the plate boundaries and three type of the tectonics and the borders and are the formed and by the movement of the tectonics and plates and convergent boundaries when do tectonics and the plates and the collides either convergent and plates and boundaries is formed. The convergent and the boundaries are also and called the destructive boundaries, and the common example of the convergent and boundaries are the subductions and zones that are the formed and when the higher heavier plates and slide the beneath and the lighter and plates and creating a deep trench. The dense and mantle materials is the formed and into the beyonds and magmas and which rises toward the crust and to the earth surface, and the rising magmas has the created other chain of the active volcanoes and known as other volcanics and arts, and over the millions of the years and convergent plates and boundaries causes the mountain formation and the formation of the Iceland arts, and in the additions and to the subjunctions and zones and the fastures, and if both the convergent and plates and are the oceanics and the volcanoes on forms are the curved and line of the Iceland and parallel to the trench knowledge as and the Iceland and are the convergence and can the happen and in theory the different ways and between and the oceanics and the continentals and plates and between the two oceanic plates and between the two and the continental plates and when the continentals and oceanic plates and the clays the oceanics and plates and which is the thinner and the denser is pushed the rise, while the continental plates and which is the thicker and less the dense the Washington and Oregon's United States and the coastlines is and the example of the oceanics and the continentals and convergent and plates boundaries. Divergent boundaries are formed and when the tectonic plates and put the apart and from each others. The divergent and boundaries are also and called the destructive boundaries, and the sea floors the spreadings and rift valley and occurs along the divergent borders, and the magma from the deep under the earth mantle and rises to the surface at the divergent and oceanic borders and pushing two or the more plates and apart and along the seams and the mountains and volcanoes rise. The ocean floors is the renewed and the large basins and are the widened as a the result of the process. An example of the divergent and boundaries include the mid-Atlantic ridge where the American plates and are the split and from the Eurasias and the African plates and the world on ocean are the connected and by other single mid-ocean ridge and system and making it the world largest mountain region 10,000 million and e.g. the giant and through the form on land and such as the Great Rift Valley in the Africas and where the plate are the cooled part. If the plates and the continue to the diverge and the eastern Africas and will the split from the continent billion of the years and from the now and becoming other new and the landmass and the borders and between the plates and would then be the marked and by other mid oceans and ridge and the transport the boundaries and transport the boundaries are the formed and then when the tectonic plates and traverse the horizontally and past each the others and but the parts of the plates and becomes the struck where they touch and the plate interactions and the happens and without the generatings or the destroying crust and therefore thus the limitations and are the conservatives as a the result they don't the world and beautiful landforms like the mountain or the ocean and but the slow motions and frequently and causes big the earthquakes and such as the devastating and 1906 an earthquake in the San Francisco's and stress and bulge up in thus the places of the contact and forcing the rock or to the creek or the sleep launching the places and forward and creating the earthquakes and fault are the places and where things and break over the sleep and easy in the ring of the fires and the majority of the earth and fault and can be found along the transform borders are the transformed and boundaries and such as the San Andreas fault in the California occurs as the Pacific plates and advanced the northward and past the North America plates, and it is one of the ring of the fires and most the active fault and the significant of plates boundaries and borders are the significant because Earthquake and the volcanics are the frequently associated with them, and when the earth and the tectonic plates and collides, massive amount of the energy and are the release in the forms of the earthquakes, and the different geologicals and features are the linked with each of them thus and the types of the plates and the borders and conclusion with the other plates and that the surround it and a the single tectonic plate can have the numerous and the types of the plates and boundaries, and besides as the molten rock and from the deep below and the earth and known as the magmas and can move the upward it thus and the plates and interactions and volcanoes are the frequently and found near the plates and boundaries as other result of the movement of the earth tectonics and plates and the planets and surface is the safe. Question number 14 analyzes the world climates and zone and how they are affected and by the factors and such as the altitude and the ocean current and the describes and how does and the climate zone and save the physical geography of the different region and around the world, and start with the basic intro and with the referring and to the scrambles and of the Africa and try to the analysis how it's the lead into the competition among the European power. Introduction. Reason of the world and have the different in the temperature temperatures and climate zone, and due to the different geopolitical geophysicals and characterizing thus the different influences the lifestyles of the peoples and living the under different climates condition and body. To understand different climate condition and let us the discuss and the factors and which causes the variations and in the climates of either place and or other region and latitude or distance from the equators, and the places near the equators are the warmings than the places and which are far away and from it. This is because and the rays and of the sun and fail the verticals and or the on the equators and the stantings and in the temperatures and the polar region and altitude or the height and from the mean sea levels. Temperature decrease and with the highest of other place and for other verticals rise of the 165 and meters, and there is and the averages decrease in the temperature at the rate of the 1 degree Celsius, and thus the temperature decrease and with the increased and in the height and the similar situated and on other higher altitude and at the cooler than and the Jalandhar Throg both are the most on the same altitude. To understand different climate and the condition, let us the discuss and the factors and which causes the variations and in the climates of other place and or other region. Latitude or the distance and from the equators, the places and near the equators and are the warmers, and then the places and which are far away and from it, and this is because and the rays of the sun and fail the verticals on the equators and the standing in the temperature and the polar region. Altitude of the height from the mean sea levels and the temperature and decrease and with the heights of the place, and for other verticals rise of the 165 meters, and there is and the averages and decrease in the temperature at the rate of 1 degree Celsius, and thus the temperature decrease and with the increase in the height similar situated and on the higher altitude is the cooler than and the Jalandhar, and although and both are the almost and on the same and altitude. Ocean and the current are the large movement of the water usually and from other place of warmth. temperature to the one of the coolers and temperature or the vice and versa, and the warms oceans and current rays and the temperature of the coast and the sometimes and brings the rainfall, and while the cold and current and lowers the temperature and the create fog and nears the coast and the Port Bergen in Norway is the free and from the ice and even in the winter due to the warm north and the Atlantic drift, and while Port and the Quebec and in the Canadas and remain the frozen during the winter month and due to the chillings and effect of the cold laborers and current in the spread of the fact, and that the Port and the Quebec and is the situated in much the lower altitude and then the Port Bergens mountain chain. The mountain chain and the act as the natural barrier for the wind and the ore shore and the moistures and leadings. Wind are the force and to the rise after the striking against the mountain and the give the heavy and the rainfall on the wind bird and the side, and thus the wind and the descendings and on the leewards and side and cuses and vary the low and rainfall the great Himalayas and check the moistures and laden the monsoon and wild and from the crossings the overs to the debates, and this the mountains and chain also the checks and beatings the polar cold and winds and from the entering into the India. This is the reason for which the northern plain of India and get rain the wild Tibets and rain is the perpetuals and rain shadows and areas with the lesser amount of the rainfall climate zone affecting the physical geographies and the high altitude climate. Some of the world most of the iconic mountains and ranges the include the Himalayas, the Andes, the Rockies and the Alphas and the Karakorams, and desert climates and measure the diverse desert climate introduce the Saharas and the Arabians desert, the Gobi desert and the Atacama desert. Rainforest and zone. The world's largest rainforest zones and are found in the Amazons and the Congo basin as well as in the Indonesia and Malaysia, and glaciers and ice caps and some of the world and most of the iconic glaciers and ice caps and the includes those in the Antarctica and Greenland and the Canadian Arctic. Conclusion. Overall, climate zone and play other major role in the shape and the physical geographies and of the different regions and around the world, and by the influencing the type of the plants and the animals that can the surviving in and the areas as well as the type of the landforms and that are the presented. Question number 15. Explain the role of the mountain range in the shaping and the world physicals and the geographies and including there the impact on the weather patterns and approach. Candidate can start the answer and by the basically referring to the importance of the mountains and the ranges, then the highlighting the different example, try to the explain and how it the shapings with the pattern introduction. Mountain ranges play other key roles in the support on of the world and the geographies and economically social and the cultural sectors, and it has the hug and the impact on the local weathers and patterns and which is the developed local species and topographies and hydropowers and the tourism forest and the agriculture bodies. And when the sun is situated and airs the mass and comes and across other mountain, and it is the focus to the ascend, and as it's the rises and it is the extent and the temperature fell at the moisture is the considers the chief and the characterize of this the shorts of the rain is that the windwards and the slopes and receive the greater rainfalls, and when air reached the mountain and it is the forced and to the rise over this the barriers, and as the airs move and up the windwards and side of the mountain and it is cools and the volumes decreases as a result, and the humidities and increases and the oronographics and the cloud and the precipitations can the developed when the air and the descended and the leewards and side, and it is warms and is the derriers, and because the moistures in the airs and was the drunks and out during the ascent, and this areas and with other lake of the moisture is known as other rain shadows, and while this the effect and can the occurs near the any the mountain ranges, one of the more and the prominent areas and where it can where it can be the observed and is in the Sharias and the Navadas and the leeward and side of the Western Ghat and the many times, and thus the mountains and can be the snow-capped, and while the just and to the east and the Death Valley and can be the hot and the dry, and below is other look at other snow in the mountain from the satellite, and when the temperature decrease with and the increase in the evolutions and are the cold and the normal lapse and rate at the time and the situation is reserved, and the normal lapse rate is inverted, and it is the cold and the inter inversions of the temperature, e.g. and the sea breeze and the land breeze and fog etc., and mountain weather condition also the change and the drastically, and for the example the weather could be the clears and blue sticks and then other thunderstorms and minutes, and the later the temperature and can also go from the being extremely hot below and freezing. Important mountain ranges affecting local weather patterns. Andes and act as a large and wall between the Pacific Oceans and the continental. They have a tremendous and impact on the weathers in the regions. The northern part of the Andes is the typically rainings and the warms, and the weathers is also wet in the eastern part of the central Andes and the areas to the southwestern. The mountain forms a rain covers and over the eastern plain of the Argentinas, and which has the extremely and dry weathers. The Rocky Mountain cast a the fairly and the substantial and rain shadow of the dry areas on the leewards and the side of the mountain ranges, and where wind and does not hit and which the formed, and because the mountain blocks and rain the producing the weather system and create other metaphoricals and the shadows of the dryness. The great dividing range and blocks the flow of the moist airs coming from the Tasman Sea, and this the created rain over the ranges and the reduction the amount of the rainfall in the inland regions and west of the ranges and the Himalayas have other profound effect on the climates of the Indian and the subcontinental and the Taiwan's Tibetans and the plateaus, and they prevented the freeze and dry winds and from the blowings and the south into the subcontinental, and which is the keep and South Asia's, and which the warmer than the corresponding and temperatures and region in the others and continents. The Atlas range and causes the rain shadows and affect the preventing the areas and beyond the mountain from the receiving much rainfall, and during the winter's month the highest peak of the Atlas mountain are among the few and parts of the Africas and to the she snow and conclusions. The mountain range of the world providing the essential ecosystems and waste the services and to the global communities as well as the inspirations and the employment and to the missions, and therefore the challenges is to the subsidiarily and manage and mountains and reason to avoid the degradations and avoid the subsequent and increase in the poverty and hunger among the communities. What is yours the opinions on the recent decisions of the government to allow the foreign universities and to open their the campuses in the India's and critically comment approach? In this, the question candidate need to the write and their the opinion on the recent government decisions and on the openings of foreign foreign universities and the compass in the India's and examine its critical introductions. The government and the university grant commission and decision to the allow and the foreign universities to set up and the compositions in India's and is other welcomes and welcome move and the initiative, and will not only providing access to the our students and to the global qualities education was create but create healthy and the competitions between the constitutions, institutions and bodies. The Indian government is said and to the welcomes and foreign universities and such as the Harvard and Oxford and Yale to the India's and the foreign universities and rank in the top and 500 globally, and as well as the others and the reputed foreign and the higher education institution can set up the compass in the India India's and as the outlines in the country's and national the education policy NAP, and which was adopted in the 2020 and the बाग बोतल दे दी हूँ मोड़ा की unveiling the plan and the last week and the University Grant Commission UGC and chairman appointed and out that the foreign universities and with the Indian compasses and the can only the offers and full times and the programs and out offline and not the online or the through the distance and learning the pros. The government and the universities and grant the commissions and decisions to the allow foreign universities to set up the compasses in the Indias and as other welcomes. As other welcome move. Welcome move the initiative will not only and the provide the access and to the our the student to the global qualities educations and but the create the healthy competitions and between the institutions. In this the medias and professionalizations of the functionings of the HEIS and has becomes other top and priorities for Indians and the universities. Other the challenges facing the Indians higher education and include the coping and with the demographic structures and poor the performance and adherences and to the traditional system and digitals and the divines and the struggles and in the scalings and up and the over centralizations and other lack of the accountability and the professionalism are the other issues and the burdens of the academics and the administrative responsibilities has also the significantly increased dualitings and the core and agendas of the higher education and the imparting the knowledge and the qualities teachings and the research lack of the domain expertise and in the academic administrators in the improving the government structures has also hindered and the progress of the education reforms and the reforms are the primarily reasons and management and the reforms and are not the prioritized and in India is that the universities leaderships and the academic administrations and may not have the domains expertising the improved the internals and the government structures and process and the managerial and the approaches and meanwhile the uncertainty and over the higher education and fundings the evers the increasing the student enrollment and global the competitions the continuations of the conversational systems and the prioritizing the digitalizations and the continuing the marketizations and the higher education signals and the need for the complaint and the modernization and the professionalizations of the higher education institution systems. A report by the India's based business consulting and firm the rate sheets and on the higher education and about the estimated and there the numbers of the Indian student and appointing and for the higher education and abroad grow and from the 4 lakh and 40,000 4,40,000 in the 2016 in the 7,70,000 in 2019 and that is set to the grow and to the around 1.8 million and by the 2024 overseas the spending and was the poised and to जो पानी कौन को उबाल रहा हो poised to grow from the current annuals and the 28 billions and to the 80 and the billions and 18.5 billions and to the 74 billions annually and was the 2024 and many the students opt and to go the award and for the experience and for the incomes and opportunity overseas which is not available in India and the however the some and the educators are not the sure and how much and of and the impact the move will have and the belief and the more and the immediate need is to the reforms and the current and the universities and system where individuals and the supposed and is it is clear there's the top foreign institutions that are the being targeted and by this the schemes and would have any the interested in the comings to this coming to India nor that the current and political situation is conducting to their the doings. They are the doing and currently the space and for the any independence and the critical analysis and has been the considerably. Considerably restricted and this would and the certainly and be on the mind beyond the mind of those and who leads the forums and the university and that are the being and invited and here's the stabilizing university and the campus is other challenging propositions and not to the mentions and developing courses and creating the resources facilities and the hearings the facility faculties and workers and the relocating and the international workers and among the other considers and the new regulations and allow the foreign institution and free play and they are the givings for freedoms and which is not and the giving to the Indian institution and for the installed and they can the fixed and they are the fees the admissions and norms and the have full the freedoms in the faculty appointed and the decisions by the UGC and to permits the foreign and the universities and to the established and branches in India's and will the harms the nation's higher education system the policies and wills the policies and will the policies will harm and the dilutes and the destroy the Indians and higher education systems and leading to the commercializations these decisions and will make the education and extensive and Dalit and the minorities and the poor and will be the adversely and affected the decisions and is other reflected and of the governments the pro-rich and the approach and it said and setting up of the forums and the universities and here are the avoidables and in the age of the globalizations and giving that the barriers for exchange of the good. Ideas is the happenings and it was the inevitables and that the education and would be the last frontiers and where all the barriers and would be the dismantled and conclusions the proposals and in the new education policies in 2020 to allow the foreign universities and to set up the offshores and the compensations and in India and can significantly and after the alter the dynamics and of the higher education in India and it can also save the India and the significant amount of the foreign exchange of the over times and also the becomes and is the source of the foreign exchange earnings if the overseas student also the choose and to enroll to the thus the campus Question number 17. The critically access and effort of the central government in recent year addressing the extreme and the hungers and the malnutrition in India approach. Start with the basic intro and with the reference and to the scrambles food of the Africas and try to the analysis how it led and to the competitions and among the European power. Introduction. In obedience to the takers malnutrition and the hungers and government workings with the several and programs and like the MDM and the potions atlas and ensuring the nutrition of the children and women and the pregnant mothers in the impoverished and areas, and the government seems to be the looking at the community and management of the problems and body effort of the central government and to the address extreme the hunger and the malnutrition and case the transfer seems to be the favorite to be the favorites and the solution for the several social sectors and interventions, and which includes and the health and the nutrition and sector. Example use of the jam and the trinities and Jan Dhan bank and account and the Aadhaar mobile and targeting the rights and beneficiaries and the IG and pregnant women and the families and with the children under the age of the 5 and is the possible and expanding the choice at the household levels, and they make decisions on what to put and on there's the plates and food the fortifications and food the fortifications or the food and the enrichment is the additions and of the key and the vitamins and the minerals and such as the irons and iodines and zincs and the vitamins and the A and D and to the staples and food and such as the rice and milk and the salt to the improve and there the nutrition contact and national the nutrition and strategy aims to the reduce and all the forms of the malnutrition by the 2013 and with other focus on the most and the vulnerable and the critical agent groups. The Saksham and the Anganwadi, and it is seeks to the work with the adolescent and the girls and pregnant women and nursing the mothers and the children below the 3 children and starting in the India's and decline from the 54.2% in the 1998 and 2002 and to the 34.7% in the 2016 and 2020, and whereas the child and wasting remains should 17% and thought out the 2 decades and of the 21st century, and sterling has the reduced and from the 38.4% to the 35.5% wasting from the 21.0% to the 19.3%, and underweightage the privileges is down from the 35.8% and to the 32.1%, and failure of the government effort and the India already has to the robust and the national programs and addressing the malnutrition and the integrated child development services ICDS and the national health missions, and but thus do not yet reach and enough the pupils, and despite the several efforts as per the NFHS and 5M from the 2019 to the 21 and 35.5% of the children under the age of the 5 and had the starvings and 19.3% and had the wastage and the 30 to 32.1% and had a the underweightage and condition, and regarding its the global standing as the crucial indications of the human development, the global hunger index and GHI and the 2022, and has the handed and India more the dismals news, and India came in 8th the positions and 107 out of the 121, and the delivery system is also inadequate and the plug and by the inefficiency and the corruptions, and some the analyzed and estimated and there the 40% of the subsidized and food neighbors and reaches the intended and recipient, and the current policies have the encourage and modern the agri food and the system to the price and the healthy diets and many the times and more than the diets, and that the really on the staples and cereals. Thus restrictions and has made and low the cost and food and with other high and the energy densities and the little nutrition value and more the populars and pulse are other major contributions to the address proteins and hungers, and however there is not enough and budgetary and the allocation. allocation done and to the tackle the problems and with the aid and missions from the means and of the midday and meals in the various state and the easy way and to improve the proteins and intake is lost and tough the government and has the surplus of the good grains and there is the calorific deficiency and because the allocations and distributions is not the proper and even the yearly budget and allocated is not fully unutilized way forward getting schemes and right it is the required and greatest involvement of the local government and the local communities and groups in the design and the delivery of the tolerated nutrition interventions are the comprehensive and programs and the targeting the adolescent and girls is the required if the intergenerationals and the natures of the malnutrition is to be the tackles and child nutrition the need of the hours and is to the make and the addressing child malnutrition the top and the priorities of the government and machineries and all the years around and conveyances and with the others and schemes the nutrition and goes the beyond and just the food and with the economically health water and sanitation and genders the perspectives and the social norms contributing to the better nutrition. Thank you guys. Bye bye. This session will be closed.